Whoops. Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move to proceed to calendar number 168, H.R. 5371.
The clerk will report.
Motion to proceed to calendar number 168, H.R. 5371, an act making continuing appropriations and extensions for fiscal year 2026 and for other purposes.
Mr. President, quote, there is a time and a place to debate health care, just like there is a time and place to debate energy policy and immigration and education, but not when the funding of the federal government and all the lives that are impacted by it hang in the balance, end quote. There is a time and a place to debate health care, but not when the funding of the federal government and all the lives that are impacted by it hang in the balance. Those are not my words, Mr. President. Those are the words of the junior Democrat senator from Connecticut back in 2013. There is a time and a place to debate health care, but not when the funding of the federal government and all the lives that are impacted by it hang in the balance. These words were once emblematic of the Democrat position here in the Senate. Democrats once passionately opposed shutdowns, or so they said, in large part because of the impact they would have on American citizens and American workers. Now, government workers and every other American affected by this shutdown have become nothing more than pawns in the Democrats' political games. On Friday, federal workers missed their entire paychecks. The next paycheck for our troops, Mr. President, is in jeopardy. And more than 40 million Americans could lose access to food stamps if the shutdown continues. 40 million. And yet none of it seems to matter to Senate Democrats. The party that once decried the impact of shutdowns on Americans in need and now apparently content to see 40 million Americans go without food. The senior Democrat senator from Vermont was on TV the other day, and one of the hosts suggested that members of Congress should refuse to take their paychecks during a shutdown. And what did the senior Democrat senator from Vermont say? He said that some members of Congress couldn't afford to go without pay. That's right. That some members of Congress couldn't afford to go without pay. Does he think that other Americans can? The junior Democrat senator from Arizona told NBC News near the beginning of the shutdown that he couldn't afford to miss his paycheck. This was his quote. I'm not wealthy, and I have 3 kids. I would basically be missing, mortgage payments, rent payments, child support. So it's not feasible, not going to happen, end quote. What on earth does he think is happening to federal workers and other Americans out of work because of the Democrat shutdown? Does he think they don't have mortgage payments, rent payments, school expenses, electric bills? If some members of Congress can't afford to miss a paycheck, how much more is that true for the many workers making a lot less than members of Congress pull down? The junior Democrat senator from Minnesota stated that she would not be foregoing her pay because she's continuing to work. Because she's continuing to work. Do Democrats even hear themselves? She does realize, right, that a lot of other people are continuing to work and have been working without pay now for 4 weeks thanks to her actions and those of her Democrat colleagues. How many of those workers are going to miss their rent payments or mortgage payments before Democrats are satisfied? Shutdowns aren't victimless crimes, the senior Democrat from Virginia said. Less than a year ago, I might add. Well, Mr. President, Democrats' victims are piling up. And Democrats don't look likely to spare anyone anytime soon. In fact, they're freely admitting it. The second-ranking Democrat in the House of Representatives said recently, and I quote, I got it right here, Mr. President. Of course there will be families that are going to suffer, but it is one of the few leverage times we have. But it is one of the few leverage times we have. I guess the Americans currently lining up at food banks can comfort themselves with the knowledge that they're being sacrificed to advance Democrats' political goals. Mr. President, if you ask Democrats the reason for the 180-degree flip in their views on shutdowns, if you challenge them to explain their hypocrisy, I suspect you wouldn't get much of an answer. I suspect that at best Democrats would bleat something about how this shutdown is a special case. Right? A special case. It's always a special case with Democrats. A historic blockade of presidential nominees. Well, that was a special case. Ignore anything that you've ever said about shutdowns right here on the floor of the Senate. Oh, this is a special case. I'll tell you what's actually special about this case, Mr. President. Special about this case is that Democrats' far-left base demanded a showdown with President Trump. And Democrats have abandoned every principle that they possessed relating to shutdowns to give it to their base. And while some Democrats may be privately uncomfortable about all the damage a 4-week shutdown is doing, so far, they're too scared of their base to do anything about it. Mr. President, Democrats claim that this shutdown is about addressing the expiring Obamacare COVID subsidies. But that's not really what this is about. If this was really what this is about, then Democrats would be voting to reopen the government so that we could actually engage in a serious discussion about rising health care costs and how Obamacare has failed to address them. But they're not. Because at the end of the day, Democrats don't want a solution. They want a political issue. And if countless hardworking Americans are sacrificed in the process, of course there will be families that are going to suffer. But it is one of the few leverage times we have. Apparently, that's just fine with the Democrats here in the Senate. Mr. President, we'll be voting once again this week to reopen the government. To reopen the government, restore hardworking Americans' paychecks, protect nutrition programs, support critical services like air traffic control, and that list goes on and on and on. And Democrats will have a 13th chance to vote on a clean, nonpartisan funding bill that will reopen the government. All we need are 5 Democrats to join the 3 who are with us already. And we could have the government open in a matter of hours. It's that simple, Mr. President. The solution is sitting right at that desk. The bill that passed the House a month ago is sitting at this desk and has been now for a month. And we have repeatedly called it up, asked us to vote on it. And every time we get 55 senators voting for it, everybody knows the rules in the Senate require 60. But that bill, with 5 courageous Democrats stepping forward and helping us pass it, could be on the president's desk, signed into law, and this government reopens. It could happen today. It could happen this afternoon. Let's just hope, Mr. President, that somewhere those courageous Democrats exist. Shutdowns, even partial ones, are as devastating as they are stupid. That was what the senior Democrat from Virginia said just last year. So how do you justify what you're doing now? It's up to them, Mr. President. We can do it, and we can do it today. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Democrat Leader.
Mr. President, open enrollment is 5 days away. Starting this Saturday, tens of millions of Americans face the specter of financial crisis, all while Donald Trump is dancing on the tarmac in Malaysia. Donald Trump may be having a nice time abroad, but people here at home are dreading open enrollment. Insurance plans that cost $300 or $400 a month will suddenly cost $2,000 a month or more, because Republicans prefer to shut the government down over working with Democrats to extend the ACA tax credits. Consequently, the average ACA plan is set to more than double starting next year. The average 60-year-old couple making $85,000 a year will soon have to pay an extra $22,000 or more just to have health insurance. Imagine the specter. The devastation will be felt across the country, even by Americans with private insurance. They're not exempt. Their insurance is going up quite a bit, too. The rate of people without insurance will spike by the millions. More people will get sick. More people will lose coverage. More people will go bankrupt. More people will die from preventable illness. Americans have never seen a health care like this, the one that's about to begin Saturday, and Donald Trump is nowhere to be found. Americans are going to sit at their kitchen tables Friday, Saturday, Sunday and say, how the heck can we pay these bills? What are we going to do without health insurance? What if our kids get sick? What if we get sick? And there is Donald Trump overseas, not even paying attention to this crisis. Instead of sitting down with Leader Jeffries and me, Trump skipped town for his second foreign trip in less than a month. Open enrollment is just days away, and Trump's message to the American people facing financial disaster is, greetings from Malaysia. Here's what the president needs to do. He should negotiate with Democrats to reopen the government and end the ACA crisis right away. The president should stop focusing on foreign escapades, on ballrooms, on bailouts for Argentina, and start focusing on negotiating with Democrats to lower people's health care costs. But Donald Trump isn't taking this crisis seriously still, as millions of Americans are just frightened, tens of millions, about what will happen. Trump continues to use the American people as pawns. This weekend, we learned that the Trump administration, for instance, ordered the USDA, the Department of Agriculture, not to tap into emergency funds to keep SNAP benefits, food benefits flowing to the states. The very same administration that sent $40 million to Argentina at the drop of a hat to help Trump's MAGA ally is now telling hungry families in America they can't have nutrition funding. What gall! The administration's decision to let SNAP freeze is callous, is cynical, and entirely unnecessary. Donald Trump says there's no money to pay hungry kids' workers, but he's spending $40 billion to bail out Argentina, $300 billion on his vanity ballroom, $172 million on 2 luxury jets for Kristi Noem, hundreds of millions for outfitting his foreign jet, but nothing to help hungry kids. What war priorities? What a bubble this president lives in, apart, away, and not caring about the trauma the American people are facing when it comes to health care. Let's be very clear. The administration is making an intentional choice not to fund SNAP this weekend. The emergency funding is there. The administration is just choosing not to use it. And for those who say the money can't be moved around so easily, that's a load of bunk. If the administration can cough up $40 billion for Argentina, they can find money for SNAP by this Saturday. This administration that all year long has trampled over the rule of law, illegally impounded funds left and right, suddenly says the law won't let them fund SNAP to feed hungry kids? Give me a break. Even Republicans privately know that Donald Trump's SNAP ploy is outrageously cynical. Here's what one House Republican said on the issue. She said, I find it hard to believe a department with so many slush funds can't find the money for a month of SNAP benefits. That's a quote from a House Republican. So make no mistake, Donald Trump is manufacturing a SNAP crisis instead of working with Democrats to reopen the government and end the health care crisis, which is very, very real for tens of millions of American families. Because after all, what Democrats are pushing for is the same thing what the American people want. Americans want to see their health care premiums go down. Americans want to see the government reopen. They don't want to have to pay an extra $20,000 a year just to have health insurance. And we Democrats want to solve this crisis right away. Lowering health care is not a crazy demand. It's not some left-wing pipe dream, which it seems the Senate Republican leader wants people to believe. It is rather just common sense. And most Americans, even MAGA voters, agree. 55% of those who voted for Trump, want to see the ACA credits extended. But Donald Trump and his Republican colleagues in the Senate, and even more so in the House, are nowhere to be found. So the choice to keep the government open or keep the government closed is entirely in Donald Trump and Republicans' hands. Time is short. Americans are on the brink of a crisis that could send millions and millions of families into financial disaster. Donald Trump and Republicans, meanwhile, are not even here in Washington to deal with the crisis heading straight towards us. Yield the floor. Note the